The jhanas are beautiful states of meditation, almost altered states of consciousness. They're very famous because, of course, the Buddha himself, on his night of awakening, used the jhanas to actually work on his meditation. They are what are described as calming and concentrative, and meditations that develop a sense of collectedness, another technical word called samadhi. Initially, one has to develop a base level of collectedness and concentration. So there you could use any particular object. You could use a sense of the whole body. You could use the breath. You could use actually a sense of loving kindness. A sense of the love from a puppy, and use that as a concentration object. And at some stage, this absorption, it can arise. The first jhana is a state in which we start to deconstruct the solidity of the body. So, we have these predictive processing hierarchical steps. So the body itself was also construction. The brain has to construct a body map, because after all, the brain has to simply figure out what's going on in the body from the sensory data that it's getting from the spinal cord. And so we construct a body map, but as we start to deconstruct this body map and this body becomes less solid, we start noticing that actually there's all these very, very wonderful, fleeting, energetic, vibratory sensations that are arising in the body that are sometimes called energy. There's a Pali word called piti, which is this sort of energetic sense that arises within the body. And in the first jhana, what happens is that we tune into this energy that's there, this sense of aliveness. And to give your ideas, to give your listeners a sense of like, what is this energy? I mean, this sounds very spooky. I mean, like, I'm a physicist, and no, we're talking about an experience, and anyone can kind of tune into this sense. If let's do this. Let's really rub our hands together, okay? And people should do this at home, and then close your eyes, put your palms out, and just sense into what's happening in your fingers and in your palms. And many of your listeners will feel this kind of shimmering, vibratory sense of aliveness, pins and needles, champagne bubbles type of feeling. And that kind of energy, as we deconstruct the sense of the body, can arise in one particular location or more pervasively. And as that arises, we can spread that. And when it covers enough of the body, we can also start to tune into the quality of that. Now, remember, we talked about how these body sensations actually can be viewed from a certain perspective, and so we can see that actually there's something rather exciting and rapturous about these, like a aliveness, like a massage, and an excitement, a joyousness, a happiness around these body sensations. And as you tune into those body sensations and tune into that rapturous, joyous quality of the physicality of this stuff, it becomes stronger, because the body loves to tune into that. And as it becomes stronger, the body sensations become stronger, and the rapture becomes stronger, and eventually, and this might not happen to begin with, it can be a little bit jarring to begin with when one's doing it, but over time, as your energy body becomes smoother, you can tune in and become and have this full absorption into rapturous energy that is feeding back onto itself into an absorptive state. And that is a really wonderful thing. And it is, especially for people who have had a tough time, it's really amazing to see that endogenously we can generate this kind of joy and rapture without external circumstance. And that's a revelation. That's the beginning of, oh, this is a hack. As you tune into this, you notice that, okay, this is all very lovely, but it's all a little bit too much. It's slightly like there's something, it's a little too coarse. There's something that is actually finer there. There's something that's more beautiful and joyous, which is one can tune into that. And as you tune into that, it's a kind of a mental happiness, a mental joy, rather than a more physical joy. And the technical word for that is a kind of a sukha, so that the energy is still there. But then you go into the second jhana, which is, it becomes a kind of a mental joy that pervades the body and the mind. And that, as you absorb into that, it becomes stronger and stronger in the same absorption cycle. If the first one is rapture, the second one is like, pure joy, and the energy is still there, but the happiness, the sukha, this is a Pali word for happiness kind of thing, is like more up front, and the piti is a little bit more in the background. The first jhana, the piti is a little bit more up front, and the rapture is there, the sukha is there behind it in a slightly different way. And then this becomes absolutely amazing, and it can become really very powerful. I mean, people may not have experienced that much joy. It can almost, in some special conditions, can almost become orgasmic. Okay, so this is very powerful. And it doesn't have to be. It can just be absolutely quiet and blissful joy as well. But you're infused with it. It suffuses you. I think that may even be the original way that Buddha described it. You might say, well, what's more than that? I mean, that's what we really want. We just want to be like in this amazing, joyful state, right? And yeah, that is. But, funnily enough, you kind of notice that, okay, well, this is all really rather wonderful to be in this orgasmic, joyful bliss, but actually, there's something that's even more lovely. Would you believe it? But you can only notice that when you fully, really absorbed so much. And then at some stage, you realize that what is actually even more lovely is a kind of a peaceful aspect of that joyousness, which is a contentedness. And so then you go into the third jhana, and the third jhana is where there is peace and happiness together, kind of a contentedness, and the piti, the energy, then fades away. So that's where the peace comes from, in a way, because this sort of energetic field has gone, and so it's pervaded with this peace and contentedness, kind of after the joyousness and this full, you're sort of just relaxed in a contented, beautiful, peaceful state. And that is absolutely marvelous, right? To say, okay, and it's very beautifully peaceful, and you can say, well, of course, that is the most refined state, of course, right? I mean, and it certainly is, and it's really, honestly, just absolutely very, very beautiful. and should be fully absorbed and fully peacefully enjoyed contentedly. But then, you know what? At some stage, you realize, no, 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 I'm getting so refined that actually inside that there's something that is even more refined and beautiful. And would you believe it, that that is just the peace and the stillness itself? And so the sukha, the sort of happiness, falls away, and we go into this fourth jhana, which is a peace, stillness. It's actually technically called pure equanimity. I don't know if that's such a good word, because equanimity has a sort of technical meaning separately, but a kind of peaceful stillness from the contentedness. And that is a very important stage. In fact, that is, I would say, the core. These are the first four jhanas, which are called the form jhanas, and the next four jhanas are called the formless jhanas, from 5 to 8. But actually, in a sense, the 5 to 8 are actually all sort of related to the fourth jhana. Now, this fourth jhana is to be like fully, and and there's a sort of stillness, and at that stage there's also a sense that the inside and outside can also be noticed to be the same quality of this stillness and peace of awareness. And that's it's a wonderful place to be. But then you think, well, there's something that still can be refined more. And what you realize is that, and this is quite a big jump, this is a wonderful step to take, which is that you still are actually fabricating a body, a sense of the body. It might be quite still and almost empty, but it's still being fabricated. And what happens is that all sense of boundaries fall away, going into the fifth jhana. And so the fifth jhana, your body dissolves, or any sense of boundary dissolves, and it becomes a boundless state, a state of pure, infinite space, it's called, the realm of infinite space. And that is actually can be very powerful, very liberative, because, it could, initially when one goes into these kind of things, you feel like, oh, I've always been wearing a shoe that's too tight and now I've taken it off, or something. This kind of sense of this, and just being in this very vast, boundless space where there is just space. Now, and that can be an absorption, as I said, that whole sense. And then, of course, you might notice that I've been talking about deconstructing models along the way. And these models are precisely the kind of models that come from the predictive processing hierarchy that we talked about, where we're turning off, sort of the solidity of the body, and then we're, even deconstructing the body, and now we're at space, just space, and now what we do is we deconstruct space. And you realize that, what is this space? And when you look at the space, you can come to this very refined understanding that the space is just consciousness, just made of consciousness. And it's all just awareness. And so we move into the sixth jhana, which is that everything is just vast, boundless, the awareness, or consciousness, the realm of infinite consciousness. And that is actually a very, very important place I think people hang out. It's related to maybe some other non-dual states, can be, if it's coming, it's Depends if it's done from a dualistic perspective or not, but it's very related. It's a very interesting territory across many spiritual traditions. There's always turf wars, don't worry, between traditions. I'll probably, people will say, no, 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 that's not what we have in mind, and whatever. Anyway, but this is a very important space, and which is this realm of infinite consciousness, just being, everything is just vast awareness. And, but of course, even there, at some stage, we realize that because we've been relaxing these models, releasing these models, deconstructing these models, there's a sense that no, there's something to be released here. There's something to be released here. And if we look at this consciousness and any arisings within it, what we notice is, what is this consciousness? What is it? And we see that it's made of just nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then we go to the seventh jhana, which is the realm of infinite nothingness, just pure nothingness. Now, if anyone is ever thrown into this seventh jhana, like the void, maybe in a psychedelic trip, that can be terrifying for someone who's not ready for that. But coming through the jhanas, it becomes a very liberative state. This is, if you thought that the others was this is sort of the ultimate relaxation of everything and release of everything. And now you have to say, well, there's actually nothing less than nothing, right? So that's got to be the end of the line. And yes, but there's still something, actually, which is the perception of nothingness. And that's really interesting. This is getting very, very subtle stuff. This is getting to really, really starting to deconstruct even the sense of perception in these super low-level models in the brain, because we are perceiving nothingness, and we can then go into the eighth jhana, where even that perception of nothingness starts to be deconstructed and starts to have the attention, and sort of that model gets relaxed. And then we come to this very strange and difficult to describe, slightly indeterminate jhana, which is called, which is when perception doesn't fully form, and yet there is still something there. So it's called neither perception yet not non-perception. It's kind of just on the border where perception doesn't fully form, consciousness doesn't fully land, and that's why the sort of slight indeterminate quality of it all. And then, of course, after that, you might go through a cessation where nothing forms, and there's just a breakdown in consciousness. And of course, then after the cessation, you can get a reboot, and that's when, if you haven't got the punchline yet, if you haven't got the cosmic joke, you will get it after that. You're quite likely to get it after the cessation, because then you see how the world is constructed from zero, reconstructed. But to be honest, many people get the joke along the way, and that the joke is, what is the joke? The joke is the insight into emptiness. This is the really master insight, in my view. There's all these three characteristics of like impermanence and no self, and the truth around suffering, that everything is all fabrications, or things are kind of necessarily gripping. I want this, I don't want this. All of these are sort of sub insights into this master insight, which is that everything is empty. The whole thing is just made of smoke and mirrors. It's not real. And that, you know, the typical game is to go down to a cessation to then do these insight. And of course, what I was describing earlier is just this direct recognition of these insight meditation, which is seeing the impermanence, seeing the emptiness directly. But that's really the master insight. And with that master insight, you can then work, you can really then have this shift into a new way of perceiving where the model, the experience is empty and de-reified, but you can come back into form. There is, if you're identified with anything, you're identified with this awake awareness background, the ground of being, the groundless ground, or no identification, or weird identifications. I can be identified as this bottle looking back. So, yeah. So that's the jhanas.
Again, thank you so much for listening to the episode. We really hope you enjoyed it. I just wanted to take a quick moment to say that we recently released a 30 days of meditation, science, and bliss course. You can find that here on YouTube or over at the app. We do find that the app offers a much better experience, and then you get daily reminders and you can really track your mental fitness. So highly recommend checking that out.